The title of my talk is Plants Are Trying to Kill You, which of course is a very provocative title and is meant to be. This community knows full well about the danger of carbohydrates, how this changes us metabolically and physically and biologically, can cause a lot of harm. But we need to remember as well that there are other chemicals and toxins that exist in the food that we eat that can also cause harm. Brussels sprouts alone had over 136 identified human carcinogens in them. And that just, white cat, I'm telling you, this is why kids, no one likes Brussels sprouts, right? And that's why, right? That bad taste, that bitter taste is your brain and your tongue, which are sophisticated machines, and they can tell you, like, hey, this is bad for you, spit it out. The way I came to the way of eating that I do, which is really just meat and water, is 22 years ago when I was taking cancer biology at the University of Washington in Seattle. We went over how plants use defense chemicals in order to defend themselves, but we were looking at this from a cancer perspective, so we were looking at carcinogens. And as a kid, so you give an infant a piece of broccoli, they will hate you for it. You give them a piece of bacon, and their eyes light up. So we were learning that white cap mushrooms had over 100 known carcinogens, but also spinach, kale, lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, broccoli, literally given pages and pages of every plant that you've ever come across in the grocery store, and not a single one had less than 60 known human carcinogens in them. They were quite abundant. We have research from Professor Bruce Ames from Berkeley in the 1980s that actually went into this, which we'll go on to in a minute. We were quite taken aback by this, obviously. We were very, very shocked, as some of you may be right now. And I remember thinking in my head, well, but vegetables are still good for you though, right? Our professor must have just read our minds. He looked at us like, you guys aren't getting this. And he just said, I don't eat salads. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. So I was like, right, forget plants. And I just stopped. And you go to the grocery store and everything has plants, right? Everything's either is plants or has plants in the ingredients. And I just walked around and I just came across it's eggs and meat. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just eat eggs and meat. And that's what I did for a number of years and had massive health benefits. I was playing professional rugby while in university, and my athletic performance, as well as just my physical health, just increased dramatically. It was just night and day difference. And again, still feeling those positive results 22 years later. Plants are living organisms, and they like to stay living organisms. If you eat them, they die. And so they have defenses just like any other living organism. And while animals can run away or fight back, plants can't. And so they use a lot of different things, but poison is one of their main deterrents. They use these defense chemicals to poison the animals that are trying to eat them. And they have hundreds of different ones geared towards different animals, insects, and pathogens that are trying to eat them. This is why most plants in the world are inedible. We sort of know this intuitively. If you got lost in the woods here and you ran out of food, you wouldn't be able to eat any random plant. Most of them would make you very sick. I don't think anyone is going to be able to spot the vegetables in this picture, right? So you have to know exactly what to eat, and the reason is because there are these defense chemicals. So here are just a few sort of categories of the ways that plants defend themselves. They use lectins. It's something people are gaining more interest in, but there's tons of different kinds of lectins. There's 2,500 different plants use cyanide that we know of. There's different various toxins, phytates, tannins, oxalates, hormone disruptors, nutrient blockers, things that make you very sensitive to light. And nightshades we've known about for thousands of years, and yet for some reason we're still eating these things. Plants and animals are in an evolutionary arms race. Plants becoming more and more poisonous, so less and less animals can eat them so that they can survive and thrive. And animals becoming more and more adapted to the specific poisons in specific plants so that they can eat that plant and survive and thrive. And this is where they get their dedicated food resources. This is like koalas and pandas. They eat a very specific diet. They eat other plants. They will get very sick. Most plants will kill most animals. So it's not that some plants are poisonous, some aren't. It's that all plants are poisonous. It's just that certain animals have evolved the ability to defend themselves against specific plants. But if they eat other plants, they will get sick or even die. So you have pandas and koalas, right? They eat a very specific diet. It's very, very monotonous in nature. They don't have this big, broad range of things that they eat. They eat very specific things. There's 340,000 species of plant in the world. Koalas eat one. Pandas eat one. Cows, horses, grazing animals eat grasses. And they only eat specific grasses. And then The leaves that a giraffe eats are different from the leaves that a gorilla eats. Those are different from the leaves that a deer eats, and so on. And if you mix those leaves around, they all get sick or die. There are symbiosis between plants and animals. Obviously, this is an evolutionary trend in the ecosystem. You have animals co-evolving with plants. You get all the Great Plains and grasslands have evolved with the big grazing animals. They work together symbiotically. But also, you can look at fruits. We think, well, fruit, the plant wants you to eat them. Like, well, maybe not. They want something to eat them. So most fruits are still actually going to be toxic to humans. This is the study from Professor Bruce Ames from Berkeley. This was published in 1989. And he showed that just the natural plants and vegetables contain 10,000 times more naturally occurring pesticides by weight than the industrial pesticides that we were using on them. And that they were orders of magnitude times more likely to cause cancer than the industrial pesticides, in this case ALAR, which they were looking at specifically. They were trying to actually get it banned, and they were saying, we're not getting rid of this is poison, and it is. Spinach is worse. He, at that point, identified 42 different toxins that existed in just a plethora of different plants, like everything. I mean, in the article you'll see, it's just every single plant that would exist in the produce aisle was there, and 42 toxins, 20 of which were shown to be carcinogenic in mice. Fast forward 11 years later, when I took cancer biology, we already know about 136 just in Brussels sprouts. There's more. So even though we've talked about today about the WHO pushing fake meat and lab meat and all these sorts of things, they still have a page that you can look up that all talks about all the natural poisons that are in plants. And this natural toxins in food, as they call it, does not talk about anything that exists in actual meat, except for the aquatic biotoxins, but this is from algae. Shellfish and fish should eat the algae, and that can make that toxic. But this is why you avoid things that are infested in that area. They talk about all sorts of different things like cyanides, pyranocoumarins, lectins, solanine, mycotoxins, and much more. And they talk about poisonous mushrooms as well. Think about this. We eat mushrooms, but there are over 10,000 varieties of mushrooms in the world. How many of those don't kill you on the spot or give you a religious experience, right? There's like 5, right? And yet we think that because these 5 don't give us an acute stage reaction of that nature, that not only are they safe, but good for you, which I think is a bold assumption to take with your health. Speaking earlier today about the effects of the mitochondria on cancer, all of those carcinogens in plants damage your mitochondria. The specific categories, such as lectins are protein that exists in many different plants. They have a bunch of different functions. They actually have lectins in animal meat as well, but they don't seem to cause any harm. These are proteins that can bind to carbohydrates, and so they can bind to carbohydrates on the surface of your cells. And and this is something that's been researched more and more. Dr. Paul Mason has a really good lecture on just lectins. Dr. Gundry wrote an entire book called The Plant Paradox, talking about how toxic lectins are, and then concluded that you should eat a plant-based diet, which I don't think I would come to that same conclusion.